Running backs like Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, and Javonte Williams are all top 12 plays this week, just as we predicted before the season. We reveal and debate our running back and quarterback rankings for week 8 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen every day. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy leagues. We're in the middle of the season, and if you have a bad record, that's okay. There's still plenty of time to make it up and make those playoffs. It's all just about making the playoffs, and then anything can happen. I want to let you know this episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we're going to start with our running back and quarterback rankings today. We'll get into our wide receiver and tight end rankings tomorrow. Now, we do have some big trade news. DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs. We will discuss that when we get into our quarterback discussion later on today's episode. But let's start with our running back rankings. We have the typical guys right at the top, the Derrick Henrys, the Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, like guys you expect to be up there. Joe Mixon has been fantastic. I am at running back 1. You have him at 3. He's going to be great against Indy. Kenneth Walker has a great matchup against Buffalo. He'll be great as well. But then you have these guys that were, picked up off of waivers, or you just weren't expecting them to have that great of a season. And they're very good plays this week, starting with Kareem Hunt, who you have as your running back 7 against the Raiders.
Yeah, I don't see the Raiders stopping Kareem Hunt much. I mean, he is getting massive volume, 28 carries last week in that win over the 49ers. It wasn't super efficient, but that was a tough defense against the run. The Raiders are not a tough defense against the run. The game script is going to be positive the whole way. And that's what's happening with the Chiefs, is they're getting so dominant with their defense, and there's really nothing that scares you except for Brock Bowers on this Raiders offense, and they'll let Brock Bowers get yardage because that's all that's going to work really here for the Raiders. So I figure they'll be ahead, and we've seen them really turn to the running game and be dedicated to it because, again, they can do that when they're dominating defensively. They don't have to get high volume of the passing game. So Kareem Hunt has looked good, and they've used him a lot in the red zone when they were handing off to Mecole Hardman or letting Patrick Mahomes run it in. It's been Hunt pretty much exclusively in this backfield. So that's why I'm really high. The matchup is fantastic, and the production has said he should be a top 10 running back of late.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 games that he's played, running back 4, running back 11, tougher matchup against the 49ers last week, but got 22 carries and got the goal line work with 2 touchdowns. Like the 2 weeks that he's started, 27 carries and 22 carries. Yeah. Isaiah Pacheco had 1 career game with 22 carries. So they're just feeding Kareem Hunt like crazy. He's a great play this week. Now, we're a little bit different on Javonte Williams. I know I had him in the beginning segment saying he was a great play. You think he's a great play, running back 11 against the Panthers. So I totally get it. Amazing matchup. I have him at running back 26, probably too low, but tell me why I should move him up.
It's the Panthers. That's a simple explanation. The Broncos are also at home, and you had evidence last week that he's still good when he can get going and they get him the touches. And they've tried, right? Audric Estime trying to get him in there. Joel McLaughlin is really tiny here. They don't have Samaje Perine anymore. So when you look at this, I mean, it's really about him getting the key touches. And he looked great last week. He was also a good outlet receiver. I think he's vibing a lot with Bo Nix at this point as they both are dominating together on the ground here. And the Broncos, again, should be playing from ahead. They should be in complete control of this game. The Panthers really are in a bad spot because they won't be able to pass effectively on this team. So, again, positive game script, great matchup. This one's even better for Williams and the Broncos because it's in Denver. There's no travel involved here. They typically play well. So, yeah, I just think he's going to get what we saw there. And if it's anything like the Saints game, I think the Panthers maybe be able to tackle a little bit better than the Saints. I'm not sure about that, but Williams should go off again.
Yeah, I need to move him up from running back 26. I think he's a really solid RB2 play. He's still only got
You got to
14
get your
carries last
Javonte
week.
Williams bias out the door. Like
Yeah.
after last week, I had it too, right? I didn't think he was going to do much against the Saints because the Saints typically are good against the run, but this Broncos team just has a good flow of the offense. And really, you trust any of the receivers all that much? I mean, it's really Nix and Williams kind of carrying the workload, right?
No, and they should be killing the Panthers. It might even be, I mean, I haven't seen anything about Andy Dalton, but he and his family got in a car accident.
Yeah, it was a little scary, but
Yeah, who knows if he's going to be able to start. So it might go back to Bryce Young, and the Broncos defense is just going to destroy the Panthers, which will allow them to run more. I don't know if he's going to score 2 rushing touchdowns again like he did last week, but he's still a really solid play. Now, a guy I have a lot higher than you is DeAndre Swift, which is surprising because you've always been on this Swift train. I have him at running back 11 against the Commanders. You have him at running back 22. The Commanders are middle of the pack against fantasy running backs, and DeAndre Swift, the last 3 games played, he's finished as a running back 3, running back 2, and running back 6. So running back 11 for me might also be too low because he's getting a ton of touches. He's getting the goal line works. He has a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. And he looks really good as well. So why do you have him down at running back 22?
I just think there's a lot of running backs that have really good matchups. I like Williams' matchup. I like Tank Bigsby to stay hot against the Packers. He's going after the Joe Mixon defense that wilted last week. We'll see if Taylor can return, but that's really good for him against the Texans. James Conner looked great on Monday night, and he gets a pretty good matchup against the Dolphins. So what I'm saying is he might be RB22, but in a normal week, this could be RB12 production, right? There are just so many guys. Last week was the week of the running back so far in fantasy football. So it's almost like if you don't get 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, like you're going to drop to RB2, which is fine. This is great for all of us, right? If we invested well in backs and we have these guys in the top 24, you could get 2 quote RB1 performances, right? So it's nothing against DeAndre Swift. I love the matchup here too, because I think you have to run against the Commanders. There's no Jonathan Allen, and you kind of have to take pressure off Caleb Williams. So, and we know Swift can get it done in the passing game as well. So I'm just not sure he's going to score. And I think it really came down to that, right? Which guys I trust to score more are ranked a little bit higher than the guys that may not be involved near the goal line. And that's it. But this is a great week for running backs. I'll just say that. That's why these decisions are so tough. But if you invested well at this position, you should be just fine and produce well this week.
Yeah, the running back position's looking great going into this week. On the other hand, when we get into wide receivers tomorrow, after wide receiver 5, you're like, I don't even know how to do these rankings. It's so hard, but that's a tomorrow problem. One last thing I want to ask you about your top 12 running backs, because like I said, the normal guys, you're starting them, the elite guys. I also have Jonathan Taylor as my running back 9. If he comes back, you're plugging him in. Josh Jacobs has been solid enough. Yeah. We both have him top 10. Kyron Williams has been great. Obviously, he's in your starting lineup. But then Devin Achane has Tua coming back. You have him as your running back 12. I'm at running back 14. So I'm right with you there. Against the Cardinals, I know it hasn't been great for him without Tua on the field, but week 1 with Tua, he was the running back 6. And then last week with all of the guys healthy in the backfield with Raheem Mostert there, Jalen Wright active, it was still Achane who led the team with 15 carries. He got the touchdown, or no, he didn't get, nobody scored a touchdown there, but he got the receptions, he got the carries, he got the snaps in that backfield and led the backfield by a good amount.
Yeah, that's why he's high up there. And the Cardinals, you mentioned earlier in the week, we don't know which Cardinals defense is going to show up necessarily. They're better, I think, at home, however. This is on the road in Miami, and it's a little bit tougher for them, I think, in general. They got fired up, right? They overachieved a little bit. It was a Monday night game. They're not in prime time very often. So I think you had that energy working. But now they're on a short week, going on the road, a long road trip, right? Going from Phoenix area to South Florida. Can wear you down a little bit, and it's still hot down there. So I think this is great for Devon Achane to get going because, again, the passing game is going to come to life. You can't focus on the running game anymore. And I love Mike McDaniel, but, man, he just needs everything in order, right, to get his offense running. Everything was out of order. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't a great adjustment coach. But now that everything is back there, we should restore normalcy in what we've seen in this Dolphins offense.
It'd be really interesting if Tua comes out and the offense looks back to normal, because then that
Yeah.
means at this point, Tua's not just a system quarterback, and maybe
Yeah.
Mike McDaniel has actually been leaning
He's
on
a
Tua
system
more than
coach, or he's a
yeah.
personnel coach. We can call him a personnel coach. He needs the personnel, or he's not going to do
I
well.
hope he fixes this Dolphins offense, because
Yeah, it was
we
bad.
need it. We're going to continue our running back talk and finish up our running back rankings here, and then also, of course, get into our quarterback rankings. We have all that coming up on the show right after we take a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I always use this app no matter what tickets I'm buying, whether it be for baseball, for football, for concerts. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get a panorama view of your seat before you buy, so there's no surprises. You know exactly what you're going to see and your view when you arrive to the event. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps and you're set. And then they also have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong, which is always a worry when you're buying tickets for the future. But they have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantee, and job loss assurance. You get to take all the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. What's also amazing about Prize Picks that's not offered in any other DFS platform is their injury insurance policy, so that your lineup stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your picks are still live. Vinnie and I, every single Friday, we give you our 6 favorite Prize picks of the week. So make sure you come listen to that. But if you want to get signed up and get started before then, all you have to do is download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. There's one running back that has been extremely disappointing over the last handful of, or few weeks, I should say. And it's Jordan Mason. It's been a while since he's been a good fantasy play. I mean, he keeps finishing as running back 25 or worse. Like, he's not even giving you RB2 production, despite the workload. But I am giving him the benefit of the doubt this week. I have him as running back 12 against the Cowboys. You have him at running back 23, so you're a little bit lower. But the Cowboys are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to running back this season. And Mason this last week didn't look injured, right? Like, I know he has the shoulder injury, but he looked fine. And it was a really tough matchup against the Chiefs. So they're going to keep feeding him. He's getting all the snaps. He's getting all the carries. He's getting all the goal line work. I'm going to have him at running back 12. They need him this week. The 49ers are really injured.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to me, is he going to get the receptions and the score, right? Because that's the thing that these other backs can do. We saw Joe Mixon score a long touchdown last week. We know all those backs on the top, Jahmyr Gibbs, and these other dudes can come through in the passing game, where Jordan Mason, I don't think they're suddenly going to change his role, right? With all their injuries, they're going to probably use Kyle Juszczyk a little bit more, maybe spread it around with the tight ends. And we'll see if Juwan Jennings returns. And then they're probably going to run their offense as close as possible to what they've had, because they've dealt with not having Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk before. Both of them is a little tough. But if Kittle can get out there, then we'll see some normalcy in the passing game. Therefore, I'm not so high on Jordan Mason this week. Again, I'm not sure he's going to score, and if we're depending just on his rushing yards, I think Cowboys have shored up a few things up front to what they did with the overshown there at linebacker, kind of changed the way their run defense was. So I think Brock Purdy will still put it up in this game. And there's enough matchups he'll like in the middle of the field, and that's how they'll adjust this week. So I like him. I mean, he's still playable. I have him as an RB2. I just don't like him as much as other backs this week, given his recent finishes.
One guy that's the opposite of Jordan Mason is putting up big numbers in 2 of the last 3 weeks. It's Tank Bigsby. And he gets the Packers this week. That's a solid matchup, even though the Texans lost last week and CJ Stroud struggled. Joe Mixon did not struggle at all. I mean, he was destroying the Packers on the ground. But you have Tank Bigsby at running back 13. I have him 18, but that gap is minimal. Like, I'm fine with him at 13. He has put up over 100 rushing yards and scored 2 rushing touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Travis Etienne is still, I guess, technically day-to-day, but I don't even really care if he plays, honestly. Like, it's still Tank Bigsby's team at this point. He is way outplayed Travis Etienne. Etienne's not even trying, and I don't think he's going to come back in his first game after this hamstring injury and like be out there a lot. So nice matchup, and he's going to get the workload. So Bigsby's a great play this week.
Yeah, and I also think Travis Etienne is probably going to be demoted when he comes back to kind of a change of pace receiving back. I mean, how could they said Bigsby again when they played Bigsby and he's had games? That's when they've won games. So Doug Peterson is coaching for his job. Guess what else has happened? Trevor Lawrence has started to play better when Bigsby in the running game gets going. It opens up the field for Brian Thomas Jr. downfield. So I don't know why you would mess with this formula. I think they were just kind of tongue-in-cheek with Etienne and his usage here. Bigsby is the guy here all the way. And again, he could be a league winner that you didn't expect. And I think I kind of thought this might happen in 2023 as a rookie, but he had to work out of the doghouse for some reason. But now Etienne, I think, is the guy in his role from 2023.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Etienne fantasy managers, it's not looking
his
bright.
Brother's looking okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Georgia's looking good.
Yeah. But Najee Harris is looking really good lately too, over 100 yards and a score in each of the last 2 games. I have him at running back 19 this week against Giants. You have him running back 25. Giants are middle of the pack against running backs. Nothing to be scared of when running backs are facing them. But you also have Jalen Warren as your running back 26. So you have them back to back. I'm not as high on Jalen Warren this week, but he definitely could get some receptions, maybe steal a touchdown. But why do you feel so good about Warren this week?
I mean, honestly, I'm not sure how it's all going to play out between these guys, but I know both of them will have success. I mean, the Steelers' offense is what it wants to be right now. And the Giants, look, they're picking up the pieces from last week. And I actually don't think you want to get too crazy trying to get the passing game going against the Giants because, again, they have guys who can get after the quarterback inside and outside. So one thing you can do, and the Eagles kind of had that blueprint, run them down, wear them down, right? That's how you attack the Giants for sure. So I think they're going to follow that. The Steelers love to run the ball in opportunities they can, and also they should tee off defensively in this game, right? They're looking for a nice big game defensively that they haven't had in a few weeks. I mean, they were okay against the Jets, but I think we haven't seen that dominant performance where they're just using the pass rush to crush it, right? So Daniel Jones is going to get leveled, I think, often by this front because everyone's healthy, right? Finally, you have Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt and everyone. So again, correlation, running game, defense, it's always there. So I love Harris and Warren getting plenty of touches in this game interchangeably to help Russell Wilson.
Another backfield where I like 2 running backs in it, and I think you could start both of them this week. It's the Buccaneers. Yeah. They get Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. They're both heavily involved in this offense, right? It's not like I have them ranked super high, running back 27 and 28, because they're going to hurt each other. They're going to both play, sure. But you have them a lot lower at running back 37, 38. I actually think you could start them both. Not expecting like massive performances, but they're going to have to run a ton with these wide receiver injuries. They're going to have to, I mean, we saw Irving start to get targets last week. We know Rachaad White is going to get a ton of targets. And when they get around the goal line, it's going to go to White as a receiver or Irving as a rusher. Like, I like both guys. And maybe the Falcons isn't the easiest matchup ever, but I really think they're going to have to lean on their backfield in this game.
So I told you about my earlier tiers running back, right? I have the workhorse backs, the guys that can score a lot. Then I have the guys that are just rushing and could have success there or just receiving. these two guys being in a three-headed monster does not appeal to me at all, right? I know Irving was able to get a touchdown last week and White was involved in the passing game, but I just don't have high expectations. Like, I don't want to play anyone higher than a flex. I'll just say that. That's why they're kind of down there. Like, when I have basically an RB3, if you look at it, all the way up to, like, say, RB40, like 25 to 40, right, are players that are in flex consideration, especially in running back over wide receiver. So that's what I'm concerned about here. I don't know what this offense is going to look like because it's going to be a whole game without those two receivers, right? I mean, it was Godwin going down the last drive. Evans at least was out there early, so I'm not sure what I'm going to get. Who knows? Sean Tucker could be out there and doing something back again after being the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Totally forget about him in the next game. So who knows? So I don't know. I don't like this the Bucs offense. It's just kind of trending down. I think they're going to have to throw a lot more here with Baker Mayfield, I think, going forward. And they already do because they tend to abandon the run pretty early already.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how much they're used as
Yeah.
receivers. I think there'll be enough usage. I'm interested to see how this entire offense flows without Evans and Godwin. Now, to finish up our running back segment, I want you to rank these three guys super, super quickly. So I'm going to go with Bucky Irving against the Falcons, or Alexander Mattison versus the Chiefs, or Ramondre Stevenson against the Jets. Rank those three for this week.
Yeah, I reluctantly like Ramondre Stevenson. I'm just going to say that. I mean, he's getting paid a lot. They got to use him. I don't think the Jets are going to run away with the game. The Chiefs matchup is really hard for Madison, but he is the volume guy, so that's why they're kind of okay. Maybe I have created another tier volume guys that are in terrible matchups, and Stevenson, Madison fall into that. Well, I think now you have White and Irving kind of splitting in a bad matchup. So that's kind of how I have them ranked. That's how I would go. Stevenson, Madison, and Irving sound like three presidents' names.
So I'm actually going Irving, Stevenson, Madison. I don't think you can play Madison this week. I know he's been okay. It hasn't been anything super
Yeah,
exciting.
I don't
And the
like
Chiefs
playing
are
any
giving
of
up
them.
by far the fewest fantasy points to running backs this season. I can't imagine that Madison is the one running back that can figure it out against this Chiefs defense. So I am staying far away from Alexander Mattison. We are going to get into our quarterback rankings. We have some really fun matchups. We have some hard decisions to make. And now we have Patrick Mahomes with DeAndre Hopkins. So will he be a better fantasy quarterback moving forward? We will chat about all of that after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It is America's #1 sportsbook, and we're officially here. It is the halfway point of the 2024 NFL season, and fans, you want to start the second half with a big return on FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the season here and you're locking into a game, you can also look into the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Now there's some interesting heavy favorites this week, including the Lions, who are almost 12-point favorites at home against the Titans. You can navigate through those, see if those underdogs can cover. You can make your own picks there. You can check out my picks against the spread as well at Sporting News. So we have those as well to go with, but you can also make your own picks and place your own bets. And the best way to do that is going to FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michelle, the quarterback rankings were interesting this week. I kind of took the most time here in a wide receiver because so many things are affecting these. The running backs were easy. It was just hard to say who's going to have a better game with all these great matchups. But the quarterback is like, oh, we need to find somebody that we can trust after a really bad week for them.
Yeah, there's like obviously Jalen Hurts has a nice matchup against the Bengals. We're trusting him. Jordan Love has been great, amazing matchup
Great
against the
matchup.
Jaguars. I actually have Love as my quarterback 1 this week. You have him 2. You have Hurts 1. I have him 2. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, you're throwing in every single week. But I have Joe Burrow, who was a bit of a disappointment. Actually, the last 2 weeks, he's been a disappointment. Quarterback 13 and 14. Not exactly what you're looking for from Joe Burrow, but I have him as my quarterback 4 this week. You also have him a little bit higher at quarterback 7. I like this matchup against the Eagles. They're middle of the pack against fantasy quarterbacks, despite playing Deshaun Watson and Daniel Jones the last 2 weeks, and they're still middle of the pack against quarterbacks. Plus, they played Derek Carr 1 week. They have allowed a big fantasy day to Baker Mayfield and Jordan Love. So I do think this will be a high-scoring affair, and Joe Burrow will put up a lot of points.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a great game if you want fantasy points because you have the two receivers on both sides, arguably the two best duos in the league, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. You got these quarterbacks. They were both taken in the 2020 draft. So they're going to go after it back and forth. The Bengals are actually favored in this game. So it's going to be a tight one. And I think there's going to be a lot of scoring because both defenses have plenty of holes. Eagles in the passing game. So that's why we like Joe Burrow quite a bit. The running defense stinks for the Bengals. That's why we like Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. So bring on the points. I think this is going to be a great game. I have Burrow at 7, so I think he's an excellent play this week, along with Hurts, who can smash it at the top after, I would say, a very good get-well game for him last week. Even though he didn't throw for a lot, he scored twice. That was a typical Jalen Hurts game, and Burrow is going to have to answer that with high volume this week.
Yeah, he will. And T. Higgins has been playing great. Jamar Chase is amazing. Like, he has the weapons he needs. The running game isn't working at all. So hopefully they throw a lot in this game, and Joe Burrow just has a huge game this week for fantasy. Now we have a huge matchup against Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. Hopefully Jaden Daniels isn't practicing today, but it's only Wednesday. He has a rib injury. I am a little bit worried about Jaden Daniels in this matchup. I'm not going to lie. The Bears are a really hard defense. Also, if he has the rib injury, will he take off and run as much? Will he be nervous? We still have him ranked high. I'm at 7. You're at 5. I'll probably end up moving him down if he does play. Hopefully he plays because this is just such a fun matchup. Now, I have Caleb Williams at 6. I think he has a lot to prove after the bye. He's feeling hot after that huge game. And as long as Jaden Daniels is playing, I think I really like Caleb Williams this week. Obviously, if it's Marcus Mariota and the Bears can just run and beat them, then it's not going to be the same. But you have Caleb Williams down a bit at quarterback 14 this week.
Yeah, I do like a few guys a little bit more just based on their matchups. But yeah, this matchup against the Commanders, it was awesome early in the season, but it's not been as good for quarterbacks of late. Part of it is winning up front. I think these guys are really finding their pass rush. Right? Dante Fowler Jr. is getting active and making plays. They do have quite a few playmakers, and it's also the Dan Quinn scheme that's coming together, and all these players are gelling. So I don't think it's as easy. The Commanders' numbers are a little bit skewed, right, from what we saw early in the season. I mean, they've also played some big-time quarterbacks, including Lamar Jackson. So a little skewed numbers. I think Caleb is going to be okay. But, again, I think this should be a rebound week for quarterbacks, and there should be a lot of higher scoring bar this week. So I'm going to put Caleb Williams right behind that. He could easily get 2 touchdowns, a little bit more than 200 yards. But I think a few more guys can have bigger days with their volume this week.
Yeah, you have Kirk Cousins as your quarterback 6. I get it. It's against the Buccaneers. Their defense stinks.
Yeah.
In the secondary, he just destroyed them a few weeks ago and finished as the quarterback 1 on the week. Now, this game's on the road. The other game was at home. And, Kirk Cousins is always better at home. Plus, it is hard to destroy a team twice in 1 year. So I'm a little bit worried there, especially because the rest of his weeks this season, Kirk Cousins has been a pointless fantasy quarterback. But it is too good of a matchup to avoid.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to throw. I know you can run on them now. The Buccaneers are a little bit more vulnerable, but the Ravens were more calculated with that, right? They kind of held back Derrick Henry into the second half where they wore down the Buccaneers. They're just not the same team. Vita Vea is in there and healthy, but that would probably say they're going to run in the second half more so. So they'll probably follow that blueprint, throw a lot early in the game, get a lead, put away the Buccaneers, knowing that they're probably not going to be able to come back the same way with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out.
Now on the other side, Baker Mayfield, without his wide receivers, he's the quarterback 2 in fantasy this season, behind only Lamar Jackson. You have him still as your quarterback 8. You're sticking with him high. I have him at quarterback 13. Can he do it without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is the question. I know they're going to have to throw a lot, but will it matter? Like, can these guys do it for him?
Yeah, that's a question. I just know he could end up throwing 50 to 60 times in this game if the Falcons come out hot. And we're just going to go with that. I mean, last week it wasn't pretty, right? I know he didn't lose Godwin until the end of the game, but he played without Mike Evans, and he just kept relentlessly throwing. And I guess we know that Todd Bowles doesn't take out his quarterback ever. So even if they're behind, he could be chucking this ball a lot. And I think part of it is he's just playing well. I know he had the interceptions. He could have had a really big game against the Ravens if he had just not thrown some stupid balls there. He does that from time to time, but guess what? He still compiled numbers. So,
and he still finished as the quarterback 2 on the week.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So this is still a drop off, right? You have him at 12, 13, and I have him at 8, right? So we're still dropping him off, but there's still ways and paths and numbers in this Liam Cohen offense.
I love Baker, and I love watching him succeed. So I'm sad he has to deal with this, but hopefully Mike Evans can be back in a few weeks and the injury doesn't linger for longer than that. But they have decided not to place him on IR, at least for right now. So that's pretty big news. It does seem like, though, he's going to be out for at least 3 games. Now, Kyler Murray, we're very different on this week. I am at quarterback 8. You have him down at 18. He gets the Dolphins. I know they allow the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. I just don't truly believe that the Dolphins defense is that good, right? I think teams just don't have to do anything against them and they can just try to run it out on them because of how bad the Dolphins offense has been since week 2, right? So that's why I'm just not really believing that the Dolphins defense is that shut down. And we've seen now Kyler Murray finishes as a top 5 quarterback 3 times this season. He's running the ball. I'm going to put him at quarterback 8. It's not like I feel amazing about it, but quarterback 18 feels really low.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just not been impressed with him a little bit with his passing at all. Like, it was a grind. I mean, he was very fortunate to get that run. It was really just bad tackling there. Junior Colson of the Chargers was a rookie. He kind of schooled him, but that's what Kyler Murray does. You can't take that away. That was still a part of his game there, rushing for that touchdown. But it was looking a little dicey before that happened.
They need a new play caller because
the plays are a little bit worrisome, right? It's on the road, and the Dolphins are actually okay containing running quarterbacks as well in a weird way. So I don't know what you're going to get from him. Kyler Murray's like, he could be where you have him at QB 8. I am at QB 18. He'll probably finish somewhere in between, right? Do the math there. You'll have him probably split the difference between our 2 rankings around QB 13, right? So I don't know what you're going to get from him. That's kind of why I have him down there. He's a bit of a wild card now with like the inconsistency of the wide receivers as well.
Now, to finish up our quarterback rankings here, let's rank these 3 guys quickly. If you had to rank them of how you want to start them this week, you got Russell Wilson against the Giants, Jared Goff against the Titans. Jared Goff has been sneaky good the last couple of weeks. And then Brock Purdy against the Cowboys with all of his guys hurt or sick.
Yeah, I still like Brock Purdy because, again, I think they're not going to too much deviate from what they want to do. I mean, they're just going to get it to different guys, right? I really hope Jawan Jennings plays because that could be a game changer. And Kittle. If both those guys play, then it's not, I'm going to say it's business as usual for Brock Purdy, but at least he has 2 guys that he can trust. That's all he really needs, right? And he just needs people he can trust. And he trusts both of these guys really a lot if you look at it consistently when they're in the lineup. So it's 11 right now for me. But again, I want to see what happens with these receivers. Then I would say I have Russell Wilson back to back with Jared Goff. I'd like Wilson to put up decent numbers. Goff, the Titans, you look at their numbers, they actually are good in pass defense. So I think this is a big game for the running backs. And I don't know. And not having Jameson Williams, a big play threat right now, kind of compresses it for him. And it's also a tough matchup for Sam Laporta. So I'm looking at Jared Goff to have like something like 15 to 17 or something as he's been doing for 200 yards and a touchdown, and he doesn't give you anything rushing. So that's my concern here with both him and Wilson. And Purdy at least did some running last week. So that's again, they probably fall lower in my tier because I can't trust the running.
I actually have Russell Wilson ranked the highest among these 3 guys. I am at running back or quarterback 12. I just really like this matchup for him against the Giants. The 2 things he shines at throughout his whole career, but even in the last week, is play action and deep passes. Well, the Giants are allowing the 3rd highest passer rating versus play action this year, and they're allowing the highest completion percentage and passer rating on deep passes this year. So the 2 areas where Russell Wilson shines, the Giants stink at. So I am going to, I like Russell Wilson in the second start with the Steelers. The Giants are giving up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. So my number one in this group will be Russell Wilson, and I hope his shine continues. Then I'm going to go Brock Purdy against the Cowboys, and then Jared Goff against the Titans for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah, and the last guy we did say we'll mention here, and part of it is also Wilson and Goff don't have great competition. The Cowboys could be competitive as well, so that could push Purdy into volume. But one guy we'll talk about quickly to close the show here, Patrick Mahomes. I am at number 10. You have him at 17. You're more closer to the pin on where he's now, beyond QB 20 on the season in average scoring. He leads the NFL, tied for lead, I think, in interceptions. Who knew? They're going to be 6-0 with this. They get DeAndre Hopkins, but my problem is they need somebody to challenge them. This is getting boring for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, still, no one thinks he's bad, right? Because he had that amazing run against the 49ers that everyone's still talking about. So he can get away with interceptions because guess what? That's what you can do when you have 3 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs, and everyone knows you're the best player in the league and are going to turn around the playoffs. So, but fantasy-wise, he's not been great. I think the Raiders, however, it's not going to be spectacular, but I think he can at least get 2 touchdowns playing off the run against the Raiders. I wouldn't also expect too much out of DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's more of a complimentary piece to get the other guys some space here. So I wouldn't run out to get DeAndre Hopkins and put him in your lineup.
No, and definitely not this week. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
This is the thing. They're just going to run it against the Raiders. And
Thank
again, I brought this up last week. Mahomes has not finished as a top 12 quarterback since like almost a year ago at this point. Almost a full 365 days ago is the last time he's finished as a top 12 quarterback. So I'm going to keep ranking him below there. Sooner or later, he's going to do it. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like
he needs somebody to challenge him. These teams, next week against the Buccaneers, but they're not going to have their receivers. Like
maybe the Buccaneers still throw it because Baker.
They need somebody to push this guy a little bit to get him
and
to
then
grow.
after that, the Broncos. So maybe not until they place the Bills in week 11, we're going to get a good game from Mahomes. But yeah, I'm done playing Patrick Mahomes in fantasy. I don't roster him anywhere because he was way too expensive. But if you do have him, I
don't play him. Don't force play him.
Sooner or later, he's going to have a good game. Don't come at me. Like, yes, every quarterback sooner or later has a good fantasy game, like even the worst ones. But it's just never going to be consistent. But anyways, that is it for today's episode. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow hitting on our wide receiver and tight end rankings. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.